So I started this lecture 25 years ago in August 1987. And I want to pay a tribute to my father, because basically I wouldn't be standing here in academia if he hadn't been challenging me in all sorts of ways from the beginning. 25 years ago, he gave an inaugural lecture at the University of Natal called King Solomon and the Theologians. And the story he told was basically how, at the time of King Solomon, the process of state building led to an intense struggle within that society. The tribes of the Israelites had been fairly egalitarian before that. They'd been a rural society. But to build this new state required sacrifices. Grand projects had to be built: a temple, a royal palace, fortresses to defend this society against outside enemies, and all of that was built on forced labor. Some of that from people who'd been conquered, but some of that also from within that society itself. So basically what started off as an egalitarian society became very sharply unequal in this process. And there were two types of responses that the intellectuals of that day had to that development. There were, on the one hand, people who praised the glory and the riches and the power and the eminence and the wisdom of the new state. But there were also people who basically pointed out that one of the things that had been the founding contract of that society had been an escape from slavery. That basically you shouldn't go back to that society. And one of the really interesting things is that the story of Exodus as it is told today was probably found its written form precisely at this time in the reign of Solomon by people who essentially were using that as a way of reflecting on what was going on. So, we as academics, in 25 years later, have much less stark choices. My dad gave his inaugural at a time when the lights were going off around South Africa, and the lecture really was a challenge to his peers to say, well, kind of where do we stand? Today we're not in a state of bondage, but we are certainly not yet in the promised land. So we have a choice, I think, as academics, whether we become praise singers of the status quo, whether it's of nation building of a special type, or praise singers for the free market. We could also choose to basically critically reflect on where we are today, and in so doing, challenge people to think of new ways of governing ourselves and governing our economic interactions. Thank you.